What's up, Tiger fans? It's the Morgan Thomas Show with Big Al. And tonight, we have a great show for you.
That's right. Tonight, we'll give you our top 5 things we learned from Week 6 and give you our Week 7 picks against the spread.
And we're going to give you our Clemson versus Florida State preview and prediction. Big game this weekend we're excited for. And also, we're going to have open phone lines again if you want to get in on the show. 864-772-MORG, brought to you by Buffalo Wild Wings of Greenville, South Carolina. Let's load the buses, Tiger fans. We are live.
And now, the Morgan Thomas Show. Brought to you by Black's Tire Inc.
Here we go. You are watching and listening to the Morgan Thomas Show with Big Al. I'm your host and producer, Morgan Thomas. Joining me is my co-host and good friend, Big Al, Alan Adams. Welcome back to the show, Al. Another week.
Yeah, man, another week. Thank goodness it's time to have some Tiger football this Saturday. I do not enjoy the bye weeks like everybody else and relax. I don't want to watch the other football games. I want to see Clemson. So this weekend we get a little taste of that, and I'm ready for action.
Yeah, I'm done watching all the other teams. I'm ready to watch my team in orange take it to the field and go after the Florida State Seminoles. I think it's going to be a good divisional game, and I'm excited for it. We're going to talk about that on our third segment of the night. We are streaming live here in Greenville, South Carolina. Wherever you may be watching or listening, welcome to the show. You can check us out on Facebook, YouTube, or The Roar. Facebook, you can watch us live every Wednesday night, 8:30 p.m. Same with YouTube. And then on The Roar, we have our replays up at 8 o'clock on Thursday nights. That's 105.5 and 97.5 in Spartanburg. So go check that out as you're driving around town. Late at night on a Thursday night, you can check out our show. So you'll enjoy that. I'm sure the show will be a lot better than any ACC matchup we're going to talk about this Thursday night. So check out our show instead. It's really kind of neat to think about this, Al. We went from, little small beginnings. We're still small right now. But if you think about it, Al, we went from me by myself to then you and I. We keep growing this thing. Who knows where we'll go? But did you ever think that football season would come around? This is our first full football season. And we're following not only Walt, but Ellis Tolbert every Thursday night during football season. Isn't that crazy?
It's pretty awesome. Like I told you a couple weeks ago, I mean, I've been listening to the WCCP for about 10 or 12 years now. I have it on all day at work. You can ask my coworkers. I hear it probably blasting through my office the entire day. So I always have it up. I love all the people there and all the hosts. They do a great job. So it's pretty special to be a part of that too.
Yeah, we're kind of like one of them now. I know we're kind of just getting started. We're not on the rush hour yet. And if I had to do 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., I don't know if I could handle that. I don't know if I can get up that early, so maybe I'll just be okay to stick at the nighttime show. Hopefully you're enjoying watching us over on YouTube or over on Facebook. And thank you so much for the support. Hey, we wouldn't be where we're at right now or moving towards being on the radio more without you guys. Over on Facebook, thank you so much. Over on YouTube, thank you so much. Got a couple people jumping in on YouTube right now. We have 9. How many do you have over on Facebook, Al?
We have 12 over here right now. So again, Facebook kind of solid start as usual.
Oh, yeah. Well, I know YouTubers out there, you're going to make sure to share it, make sure you like it, and subscribe if you haven't already. Same thing for Facebookers. Make sure that you like and share the stream and follow our page. We'd like to keep you updated throughout the week. Want to let you know about our main primary sponsor. I guess that's kind of the same word, right? Main primary. Want to let you know about our primary show sponsor. That's Black's Tire Inc. in Westminster, South Carolina. Family owned and operated since 1971. That's a long time now.
Yeah.
If you need new tires, brakes, alignments, tire repair, or just looking for a friendly professional to help answer your questions, check out Black's Tire Inc., located 1415 East Main Street, Westminster, South Carolina. Give them a call, 864-647-9292, and check them out. I think we had a little bit of an internet hiccup there, Al. Something popped up on my screen, but it looks like we're still streaming. Mm-hmm. If you're joining us over on YouTube, make sure you give us a shout in the comments, and if you have any questions, let us know. Same for Facebook as well. But Al, let's jump into segment number 1.
Let's do it. Top 5 things we learned from week 6. We're going to go from 5 to 1 as we kind of usually do with most of these lists. And I'll actually start with my number 5. One of the things we learned, obviously, these lists are kind of fluid. You know, it's kind of one of the things we learned this week, or we think we may have learned this week. But it's kind of a temporary thing that can change every week. My number 5 is Washington is overrated. All right, you know, they were a top 15 team going into last Saturday, suffered a 10-point loss to a bad Stanford team. Stanford team is not the Stanford team of old. Washington has already lost to Cal by 1 earlier this year at home. You know, have a few tough games coming up. They play Oregon, they play Utah, Washington State, but they get them all at home. You know, maybe they can spoil a possible playoff run for the Ducks and climb up the rankings a little. But right now, Washington not looking like the top 15 team they were ranked as going into this week.
Yeah, that Pac-12. You know, I'm a little bit. I like the Pac-12 after dark. You know, it's not like they're going to be contenders in the playoffs by any means. I think the Pac-12 is kind of out of it, don't you think?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, unless you're talking Oregon, I mean, they're going to have to kind of run the table.
Yeah, Oregon definitely still has a sliver of a chance for sure to kind of push their way into it, but the Pac-12 is really weak right now as far as their ability to contend for that playoff spot. But I still enjoyed watching. I watched the California-Arizona State game, and I enjoyed that. And so I look forward to watching some more of these late-night games. That's really only airtime that the Pac-12 can get. By the time they start, we're all ready to go to bed. But for me, my number 5 of the week, and what I love about this week is that because of the bye week for Clemson, we had a chance to check out our other teams across the country. But really, a team that I really hadn't looked at a lot this year, but Central Florida. You know, did you watch the Central Florida versus Cincinnati game?
I did not get to watch the game. I was at a youth camp out this weekend, so I didn't get to watch a lot of football. I got to dabble a couple in the Georgia game and the Auburn game, but that was about all we saw on the satellite for a few minutes.
You're always at a youth, some sort of youth event.
I know it. And I love it.
Why couldn't you have been my youth coordinator or youth pastor or whatever you want to call yourself?
We can work something out.
There's still time for me. So yeah, I put Central Florida lost a lot more than one game to Cincinnati. Here, the UFC streaks ended last week. They had 31 straight games with 30-plus points, 18 straight AAC wins, 33 straight weeks ranked in the top 25. Man, that is pretty tough for Central Florida to miss out on there. It was a game, man. It was a pretty exciting game, though. I went back and watched the replay and kind of like looked at some of the analytics on it and some of the reviews of it and recaps, but it was a pretty interesting game. I think both the quarterbacks came out and could pass the ball a lot. It had a lot of turnovers. That was kind of interesting over the last week. A lot of turnovers from a couple of different games. The Miami game, some turnovers. You had the Central Florida game, some turnovers, and even the Duke game had a ton of turnovers as well. But Dylan Gabriel had a terrible game, really. He had such a bad game. I believe he was taken out of the game later on, but he accounted for 4 turnovers, throwing 3 picks and botching a snap for a fumble. So he was really at fault for every single turnover in the game, which, you know, I believe they had more first downs and more yards, but when you have so many turnovers out, you can't expect to win a game like that.
Yeah.
You know, one of his big interceptions later on in the game for a pick 6. He was like on his 5-yard line and just threw it to the outside, and that cornerback just bid on it and just ran it right into the house. I mean, just a 2 or 3 steps in, and he scored, and it was just one of those games, man. Central Florida, to be such a powerful offensive team, struggled really bad in the red zone. They could get down the field, but once they got in the red zone, they couldn't figure it out. They couldn't get any touchdowns at all. They got a couple of field goals back to back, but it was just a really big struggle for Central Florida. The big change, really, if you look at it, is Cincinnati is now on top of the American Athletic Conference. UCF has really lost its only chance at getting to a New Year's Six Bowl, which I think most people wrote them in at the beginning of the season that they would make it. They were going to be that team that, you know, was going to be that, that might be an undefeated team that's going to complain about not being in the playoffs, right? But now we know that's gone. We know that's completely out the window. I remember you mentioned this either last week or a couple of weeks ago about how you were glad that was out of contention there. They wouldn't they were no longer undefeated, right?
Right.
Cincinnati now will have to lose twice in order for the Knights to jump them in their conference, and so that's unlikely if you look at the rest of the schedule. So it really tees up well for Cincinnati. I can see Cincinnati doing really well the rest of the year. A lot of people are saying that they're one of those teams that is really a good Group of 5 team, maybe one of the best Group of 5 teams out there. So excited to see what Cincinnati can do the rest of the year. They've got to go and travel to Houston, which is rebuilding under Dana Holgorsen, and had the starting quarterback and the second string, the number 2 wide receiver, the starting quarterback and the number 2 wide receiver are redshirting, so they're definitely rebuilding there under Dana Holgorsen. But the Central Florida Knights, they have an off week, so they can kind of like lick their wounds and reassess where they are, kind of the same way Clemson did, even though it was a win for Clemson. But definitely learned a lot about the American Athletic Conference there, and that Cincinnati might be a pretty decent team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got as far as my number 4, I have that Missouri may be an SEC East contender. All right, anybody that thought Missouri was going to kind of be good at the beginning of the year immediately jumped off that bandwagon when they lost to Wyoming in the opening game. But they've recovered relatively nicely. They haven't been playing the best of competition, but they're beginning to blow out those teams, which is exactly what they should do. They only have 2 tough teams left on the schedule. They have UGA and Florida. So we all know my feelings about the Gators, and I think Mizzou can beat them at home. The only issue is I don't think they can beat the Bulldogs in Athens, which means, Georgia would have to lose twice if they were going to win the East, because the only loss that Missouri has is Wyoming in the opener, and that's not a conference game. So Georgia still has to play a neutral site against Florida, a road game at Auburn, and then a home game against Texas A&M. Odds are really stacked against them dropping 2 because Georgia is a really good team. But it's possible Missouri can find themselves kind of backing their way into an appearance in the SEC championship game if everything works out right for them.
Oh wow! So you're thinking that they might be able to back their way into the SEC championship game?
Uh-oh. We're having a little internet issue here, but you said, what was that question?
A little bit of an internet flub there. I don't know what's going on. We'll reset after that. So you're telling me that you think that Missouri could back their way into the SEC championship game?
I'm telling you they could. I'm not saying they will. I still have odds-on favorite Georgia going to that game, but I think there's a chance Georgia could lose one. I mean, obviously they slipped up early against Tennessee. Now I get it. Tennessee was throwing a new quarterback that they kind of weren't prepared for. But I think it showed that these teams can't compete, and Tennessee is the worst. Obviously, we know how bad of a team they are. So if they can compete, maybe Georgia or A&M or somebody can give them or Auburn, Florida, A&M. Maybe somebody can give them a game. They slip up and lose 2. Missouri might have a path there.
Well, I think anything can happen. That's what we talked about last week, is about how it's so important to just let these games play out. Everybody was panicking about Clemson, but you need to worry about your own team, really. I mean, we got to let things kind of play their way out, and then see how it goes. For me, the number 4 kind of brings it back into the ACC, and the the Coastal Division has really got me scratching my head more than ever. I kind of lost a bunch of Coastal Division against the spread picks last week. Virginia Tech versus Miami. What a ridiculously crazy game that was. Virginia Tech went into Miami, Al, and got their first conference win after beating the Hurricanes 42-35. But it wasn't as easy as that sounds. They started Hendon Hooker, who got his first start of the season and didn't do bad. I mean, he went 10 for 20 with 184 yards and 3 touchdowns. So that's pretty good for your first showing. He also ran for 76 yards and a touchdown. So I think that they have a quarterback that they can kind of look forward to developing in that system there. It was definitely a must-win for the Virginia Tech Hokies because the coach is on a hot seat right now, so definitely had to do something. And Miami was one of those teams. We got a big Miami fan over in our YouTube channel right now. No More Defeats is checking us out, so thank you for joining us. If you haven't checked out his channel, go check him out. He's always a supporter for us. But Miami has been one of those teams that's another head-scratcher. They were kind of predicted to be one of the beasts over in the Coastal Division, and that Virginia Tech game was good and bad for them. They started out horrible, right, and went into halftime 28-7, and then they took out Williams, their starting quarterback, who played against Florida in the first part of the season, and they put in Perry, who, I mean, he caught fire, dude. He went 422 yards, 4 touchdowns, and only 1 interception. There was a ton of interceptions in that game, but I mean, he brought them back. And I want to say at least tied the game for them. I can't remember if he took the lead or not, but it was one of those things where Virginia Tech basically let them come back from that big lead And then they were luckily able to finish it out and win the game. But it's just weird for me. If you look at the Coastal altogether, Duke beats Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech then turns around, nobody expected, beats Miami. And then Duke turns around in a 10 turnover game, loses to Pittsburgh. It's I don't even know if how confident I feel on any of those teams' picks that we're going to be doing in our next segment. But It's kind of scary for me. It just shows how important, Dabo, when he talks about taking care of the football, it shows how important taking care of the football is. Because I think that was another game where another example where Duke had a lot of yards, but you can't expect to win with that many turnovers. And so definitely one of those games I felt like Duke had plenty of chances to win, but because of the turnovers, cost them big for sure. Crazy weekend for the Coastal side of things. I think we all picked Miami and Duke in our pick'em this week, but kind of bit us there in week 6.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a crazy weekend in college football, they seem to all be. I kind of I don't feel like I really learned a lot. I know this segment is supposed to be a matter of fact, 5 things we learned in college football, but I feel more like Ron Burgundy kind of this week. It's kind of like 5 things we learned in college football. I throw that question mark in there. I'm not really sure. Speaking of, my number 3 is Oregon may be a playoff contender. I put them, kind of in my top 4 from the beginning of the season just because, schedules and whatnot. Obviously, some of their games are actually turning out to be maybe a little more tougher than we thought. Some of those Pac-12 teams are actually decent teams that weren't kind of, ranked at the beginning of the season. We're used to them scoring some more points. Obviously, they're, kind of behind Justin Herbert. They've got a good quarterback, one that's going to kind of go high in the NFL draft. Had a win against a decent Cal team. They're doing pretty well, not scoring, quite as much as we think they should be scoring right now, but they're doing a decent job. I really anticipated the opening weekend loss to Auburn when they had played. And honestly, they outplayed Auburn by a mile in that game. If they hadn't absolutely collapsed at the end of that game, then, we'd be talking about a top 5 Oregon team right now. So, they have some tough games left on the schedule, but, if they were able to make it through somehow unscathed, you're looking at a possible playoff contender in one of those top 4 spots.
That kind of goes back to what you were talking about earlier. So we need to keep an eye on Oregon because Allen's got them kind of on that bubble, working their way up. So we'll see what happens. Let us know what you think over in the comments and Facebook and YouTube right now. Number 3 for me, Al, is that Michigan showed us something. Now, I say that. I'm not sure what that something was that they showed us, but it was one of those games that was perfect for my dad. I actually watched it with my dad. It was perfect for him because he could watch the first quarter, completely fall asleep, and wake up after the game's over and not miss anything because there really wasn't anything that happened in that game. It was very boring. I believe it ended up 10-3. Iowa, who was a team that I picked to go into the big house and upset Michigan because Michigan – only good game they had was really against Rutgers. So I thought, okay, Iowa's going to go in there with their strong defense and their good quarterback and their consistent play and do something. And they couldn't get anything going. Well, they don't have a good running game. And the good thing for Michigan is Michigan doesn't have a good run defense. So there was no issue there for them. But man, they scored 10 points in the first quarter. And that's all they needed, Al. It was very weird. It seemed like you'd watch Iowa, and I'd be cheering for Iowa to do something. They'd get to midfield, and they'd throw an interception, or they'd fumble. Mm-hmm. Turn around, Michigan would do the same thing. You'd see Michigan kind of move the ball, and then all of a sudden, it was like they got towards the logo in the middle of the field, and something like magic hit them, and they just turned the ball over. It was crazy. They couldn't get on the other side of the field to save their life. Jim Harbaugh said it was a defensive masterpiece. I don't know if I would call that a defensive masterpiece. I think, it was definitely a masterpiece of something, definitely something that you could sleep through. Michigan is definitely fortunate to come away with a win. It just looked like Nate Stanley was going to put something together, and then he couldn't. And so just terrible football in my opinion. But at the media – after the game, Jim Harbaugh comes out and says that he insisted that Michigan is now hitting their stride. And I'm thinking this just further validates how crazy he is and how ridiculous he is to think that his team, after scoring 10 points in the first quarter and then doing nothing afterwards, that they're now hitting their stride somehow. Yep. Again, Shea Patterson couldn't seem to get anything going. Their running game can't get anything going. The only thing you can really say good is that they both had good defenses. It's kind of one of those things we learned, like you said.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. I'm not changing my mind on Michigan at this point. They're going to have to play Penn State, Notre Dame, and then ultimately Ohio State by the end of the year. It's not going to be good for Michigan, so don't put your money on Michigan at all if you're me or if you're listening to me. It's going to be ugly for them. I think the Hawkeyes have to play Penn State this week, and I think they're going to be in our picks next segment, so we'll talk about them a little bit further. And then the Wolverines travel to Illinois, so could be another win for them. They could have 3 wins in a row and still be a garbage team.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good transition to my number 2, because my number 2 thing that I learned was Michigan just won't go away. They won, like you said, they had an ugly win, over the Hawkeyes in the Big House this past weekend. I was really hoping that after Army took them to the wire and then Wisconsin eviscerated them, that we kind of put to rest all the go blue talk. But here we are. They're back in the picture again, because they just seem to not lose. I mean, this is a big game where they should have lost. Iowa, we think, is a better team. And I don't think Michigan is a good team at all, but here we are. They're back in the picture. It means more Harbaugh fun for the rest of us. He makes it such an easy team to hate on. And it's just, you never know what you're going to get from this guy every week. But that was my number 2. Michigan just won't go away.
Yeah, and I wish they would, really. I mean, I do not like them. I don't like talking about them. We're already talking about people in the chat are saying anything you quote from Harbaugh is going to sound ridiculous, and that's true. My number 2, Al, is a team that I'm going to jump on. The experts have jumped on. College Game Day guys have jumped on. Kirk Herbstreit specifically, I know, has come out and said that they probably should beat number 1 in his opinion, but that is Ohio State. I know that David Pollack has said the same, that Ohio State should be number 1. They're not perfect by any means, but, man, they look pretty good, man. Justin Fields finally threw an interception against Michigan State's defense, but whenever Justin Fields couldn't get something going, they had a balanced game plan against the Spartans, and the running game could get something going. J.K. Dobbins he's the type of running back that I feel like that Clemson wanted Travis Etienne to be this year. He's got monster numbers, and he's doing really well. They can lean on him a lot. He's very explosive. I want to see Travis Etienne kind of become that. We know that. Not necessarily become that. We know he's already that. He just needs to find that and get back to the J.K. Dobbins type plays that we know he's capable of. The Ohio State defense looks really good. They got better and better as the game went on, and Michigan State just kept getting stopped towards late in the game. They only allowed 67 rushing yards total in that game. Some of it's because they had to rely on the passing game to try to catch up. And so they just went after him a lot, and they weren't running the ball. Elijah Collins for Michigan State had 5.3 yards per carry with a nice 23-yard run, but only 12 carries. And I thought, when I was watching the game, I was like, well, okay, Michigan State's getting something going, but then they would start passing the ball again, and then it would kind of slow down for them. I feel like if I would go back and I'm sure if they go back, they probably say kind of like what Clemson did against UNC. It might be good to run the ball a little bit more than what they did. So I'm excited to see what Ohio State can do the rest of the season. I think that they're definitely a team that's going to be in the playoffs now after watching them against a pretty decent defense. Overall, I'm a believer in Ohio State. They're 6-0. Definitely not an easy thing to do to be 6-0. Plus, man, they went over 500 yards total that game with a heavy run game. So they just look really good all around. Up next is Ohio State has a bye week, and then they go to Northwestern. Michigan State is headed to Camp Randall, which this is going to be an exciting game for me. The only reason why I won't watch it is because Clemson's going to play the exact same time. It's 3:30. So if you have to decide which one are you going to record, obviously I'm going to record the Wisconsin and Michigan State. Wisconsin's kind of like my second team. If you had to pick a second team, I think I like Wisconsin a lot. They got their Army ties there with the stadium and Camp Randall, and I really enjoy watching them play, but I'm going to have to watch them on replay.
Yeah, I mean, drum roll, please. It's time for number 1, ladies and gentlemen. My number 1 thing that I learned from this past week is Florida is bent on continuing its masquerade as a contender. Okay. I told you when we were picking against the spread last week, this line to me looks like a setup. Okay. Based off what I'd seen from the teams this year, there's no way Auburn should have been -3. They should have been like minus, 9.5, 10 points, something like that, which screams to me, hey, pick the other team. However, You just can't do that. I've seen them on the field. I've seen what they have. I've seen what they can do. And Auburn just looked like the smarter pick to me. So that's what I went for. And obviously, of course, the Gators run away and get a 10-point victory there. It was a really sloppy game. Not just Auburn, Florida played relatively sloppy as well. But a home field kind of helped propel them to the victory there. I continue to believe Florida is a fraud. I think we'll see a little bit of support for that this weekend when they go to the Fake Death Valley. But we'll see how it goes. As of right now, they're continuing to prove that they're going to stay up there in the rankings and that they've got something for the field. So hopefully that becomes kind of an afterthought after this weekend when they go into LSU and play.
That's going to be an exciting game to watch this weekend. One of those games we're going to talk about in our second segment as part of our picks against the spread. So we're going to get more into that as the show goes on. One thing's for sure, one of those teams is going to walk away with a good SEC loss. Clemson doesn't get any of those good SEC wins, right? They get the anybody can beat Texas A&M. That's what happens to Clemson. But anybody else, oh man, they beat a good Florida team or they beat a good Auburn team. You know what I mean? So Clemson doesn't get the respect in that sense. But for my number one, I had kind of a player from that same game. And Al, as you remember, and you guys can go watch the tape, watch last week. I told you, I said, I believe Florida with the fact that they had over 20-something sacks already on the year, the fact that they can stop the run, and the fact that Auburn, all they really do is run the ball and jet sweep, and that Bo Nix cannot be trusted. I think Florida's going to win. Give me Florida +3. And it worked out for me, even with an injury, which kind of got me scared. Even though it wasn't the team I pull for, I was still a little worried about that with his knee bending backwards like that. Kyle Trask, that was kind of scary. Same thing, Kelly Bryant too, man. 2 scary knee injuries over the week with the quarterbacks. I'm glad that those 2 guys seem to be okay right now. Yeah. But my number one is Bo Nix is a long way. Again, I'm going to say it again. Bo Nix has a long way to go before he can be trusted with the offense. I mean, they took the ball away from him again. He made some ridiculously bad decisions on third down. One of the ones, I believe he ran backwards for like minus 22 yards on a third down. It was ridiculous watching that game. But I was excited to watch that game because it seemed like Florida was kind of in control from the start. They had a really big pass play at the very beginning against a linebacker that everybody on college football College Game Day was talking about how awesome he was going to be. Guy just blew right by him. So he's a big run-stopping linebacker, middle linebacker, not really a coverage middle linebacker. And it just so happened that the second or third play of the game, their fastest player lined up in the slot, like Clemson does, went after the middle linebacker. The middle linebacker followed him in man-on-man, and he was gone after just a 10-yard pass. So definitely some good game plan calling there. If you go back and watch the Oregon game, Bo Nix, they couldn't trust him then. Texas A&M, I didn't feel like they really trusted him then either. But he had a terrible game, going 11 for 27 and 145 yards with 1 touchdown and 3. You heard me out. 3 interceptions. We talked about turnovers were pretty bad this week for a lot of different quarterbacks across the nation, but definitely for Bo Nix. Couldn't seem to figure out what he was going to do when he reached midfield. Again, a lot like the other games we talked about. Trying to run for third and long, terrible plays. He looked like a freshman that was just trying to do too much. You got to live to fight another day. You know what I mean? You got to say, hey, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw this ball out of the end zone, or I'm going to throw this ball to the sideline or something. Trevor Lawrence has always, I felt like, been pretty good with that. One thing that I would like Trevor Lawrence to do a little bit better with is not get the ball batted down so much. A lot of times, that was one thing I really loved about Deshaun Watson is that he was able to really avoid getting his ball batted down a lot by the defensive line. We'll talk about that a little bit further. But Auburn, man, they have a defense. Did you watch the Auburn-Florida game, I'm sure, right?
I got to watch a little bit of it.
Well, they got a guy, Derek Brown, number 5, who almost took it to the house. Big boy almost took it to the house, stripped the quarterback, picked up the ball, and almost ran it all the way until he tripped over his own 2 feet. And that was kind of pretty unfortunate for him. But the key takeaway for me is that Florida has a top-level defense. It's going to be a big defensive battle when they go to the fake Death Valley, as you said. Auburn gets an off week. Florida now has to go to LSU, as we were talking about. And we'll give you our picks for that game as we go in it. But that's my number one.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up our 5 things we learned from week 6. I guess we're going to take a real short break, and we'll be right back with you on the other side.
What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for hanging with us after that short break. Let us know what you think over in the comments on Facebook or YouTube if you're watching live. We've got 22 people over on Facebook or YouTube right now. Al, how many do you have over on Facebook?
We're holding with 11 strong. We've kind of been at that number most of the night, somewhere around there. So hopefully we can add some more by the end of the show. But right now we're holding with 11. Not too bad.
Right now I got Marie and Luke, Stephanie, John over on YouTube, and I appreciate you joining in. If you have any questions for us, let us know over in the comments. If you want to get in live with us, we do have a hotline. It's up at the top, 864-772-6674. Call into the morgue. It's the only time you'll ever have to call into the morgue, but it's sponsored by Buffalo Wild Wings of Greenville, South Carolina. Make sure you go check them out over on Woodruff Road in the shops at Green Ridge, and get in on the show. We'd love to talk with you and get your opinions on the show, but we're going to get started with our Week 7 picks against the spread. But before we do that, Al, I wanted to let you know, people are talking in the comments already about how they love the production and the high quality of the show each week, and we really do appreciate that. But we also want to dress for success as well, and that's why we partnered with the Tiger Sports Shop over in Clemson, and they're our exclusive apparel provider. And they provided this shirt, this polo shirt for me, and that polo shirt over there for Alan as well, and the hat as well for Alan. If you like what we got going on, mine's a little bit of a lavender color. Alan's got something with stripes, so he looks pretty good over there. But if you like what we're wearing, go check him out.
Yeah, absolutely. This is actually the Tiger Sports Shop brand T-shirt. They actually have this shirt, and they have kind of the opposite of this shirt, where the white is a little more pronounced than the orange. They are both fantastic looking shirts. My family convinced me to go with this one. But this is it's kind of a brand where they're competing with the big brands, of the Cutter and Bucks and the Antiguas of the world. They're a little more affordable. They feel incredible. The Tiger Sports Shop brand is awesome. Go give them a chance.
Yeah, real stretchy material too. Feels very comfortable, lightweight. I think yours is kind of the same thing. Mine is one version of the polo, and Alan's got another version. They got a couple other options there for you to choose from. So go check them out. One of their 2 locations. You got downtown Clemson at 364 College Avenue, or on Tiger Boulevard, 1102 Tiger Boulevard. Stop by, let Julie or Sean know that you heard about them from the Morgan Thomas Show. We would really appreciate it. But Al, let's jump over to our Week 7 picks against the spread. And as you know, we start with the ACC. We work our way through the ACC games of the week, and then we go into our top 25 versus top 25, or ranked versus ranked games of the week. And so I'm going to start us off, and Alan gives us his analysis on it, and we kind of go back and forth. This is, again, against the spread. The spread, I checked it today, so I think it's correct as of Wednesday, just to make sure that no matter when you're watching this, you know when the spreads were final for us, at least on the show. First game up, Syracuse goes to North Carolina State. This is actually a Thursday night game. And North Carolina
I was wondering why we didn't have it on our pick'em. I looked at it, I was like, why is this game not on our pick'em? I was like, oh, it's a Thursday night game. Speaking of our college pick'em, I'm sure I am knocked out of first place after this debacle this past weekend. I want everybody to understand that, once I had the lead and showed that I was going to maintain that lead, all of a sudden my computer starts having issues logging in. All right. I don't want to say it's the show host's fault or he's any kind of funny business is going on. I'm just saying I tried to log in twice, couldn't, and I had the camp out going this weekend. I wasn't able to go in for a third time and check it out, so I wasn't able to get my picks in this week. I think I caught the last like 6 or 8 games or something like that to try to save a a couple points here and there. But I'm sure I dropped like a rock down the board. But as far as Syracuse and NC State goes, Syracuse really struggled out of the gate this year. It's gotten this offense going a little bit lately, albeit against really bad teams. I just think they can kind of put up enough points to get this win on the road, or heck, at least keep it close. Give me Syracuse plus 4.5.
Okay, yeah, we didn't say the spread before, so
Yep.
4.5 is what we got on the board right now. NC State's giving 4.5, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you said you're getting Syracuse plus the 4.5. All right, I could see that. And just to kind of tell you where you're at, if people are wondering about our overall records, right now I'm 93-63, and Allen is 99-57. I think he had about 7 games where he lost them because he didn't make any picks. So you can blame the computer all you want, Big Al, but
I can blame the host all I want too.
You gotta make your picks. You got many ways you can make your picks. I actually make my picks on the app. So if you had your phone with you, which I know you do, and anybody who says they didn't have their phone with them is just not telling the truth. I know that you could log in through the app. So I'm just going to leave it at that. You got a winning record, a really good record, by the way, but you are now 4th instead of 1st. Kiss of Death is in our pool, and I have no idea who that is, but he's 102-54, which is crazy.
Oh yeah,
really good. But North Carolina State, back to that game. I believe that North Carolina State has dominated this series really against Syracuse. They've won 10 of the last 12, including 5 of the last 6 at home. They have a redshirt quarterback in Bailey Hockman, who's going to get the start after a pair of strong performances. Syracuse has won 2 in a row, but not really against that good of opponents. I guess you could say Western Michigan, and then a 39-point or 38-point blowout against Holy Cross. The Orange are looking to get back-to-back winning seasons for the first time since 2012, 2013, and they're currently 21-21 under Dino Babers. Even though I feel like he's a good coach, it's not really the best record in the world. But I don't know how I feel about Tommy DeVito. He actually suffered an upper body injury during the Holy Cross game, but they're saying that he's okay. I don't know, man. I'm gonna say give me NC State in this one.
Okay, that's fair. I get it. I mean, I kind of struggled. I mean, anytime you go into, NC State on a Thursday night, we've seen those environments. We've been there many times. So it's a struggle. Heck, we've struggled there at times ourselves. So, I mean, I get it. That's not a bad pick there. This next one, however, all right, we've got to dive into this next one a little bit because this is one of the most baffling lines I think I've ever seen.
And this is the Friday night game, right?
This is Virginia at Miami. Is that what you have?
Yeah, I got the Friday night game as well. Number 20, Virginia at Miami. That's this Friday night. Miami, what I've got -2.
Okay, I was about to say I had 2.5 earlier today, so let's say -2. This is just one you can't explain to me. I don't know of any football reason whatsoever that Virginia should be the underdog here. Miami just lost to Virginia Tech, and Virginia Tech is a terrible team. Virginia's actually been pretty solid all year from what I can tell. Obviously they had to slip up at Notre Dame, but they didn't play horrible in that game. And that's a tough one as well. It's a game you look and think, this is easy money. If you're a gambler of any kind, but Vegas knows something. All right, they know something here, but your brain simply won't let you pick Miami. This is just like the Auburn-Florida game for me last week. So give me the Cavaliers +2 here.
And I'm feeling the same way. It's a very weird game to pick against. It's one that I don't like to pick against. It's another one of those coastal games that you feel like the team that should win. And before you know it, 15 turnovers later, the team that you thought were going to win or was going to lose actually wins the game.
Right.
I think it's because Miami's at home. So I think they give them a little bit there, right? I think also because Nosey Perry came out and played a solid game, like we said, over 400 yards passing, and did really well against Virginia Tech and brought them back to within winning the game, but then they couldn't put it away. Yeah. If he's the quarterback again, you got to think that they might be on to something now with their backup quarterback. Yet another – man, this will be the 3rd Florida team that ends up finding some success with their backup quarterback while their other quarterback is not doing so well. Florida felt the same way. Florida State had the same issues, and now it looks like Miami's getting into it as well. But the problem is Virginia had the week off, and so they're rested up. They're coming off a closer game. I think it was a little bit above the spread, unfortunately, but Notre Dame beat them 35-20 at Notre Dame for their first loss of the season. So Virginia is 4-1, 0-2 in the ACC. and Miami is 2-3 on the year. Like you said, couldn't end up beating Virginia Tech. I just don't see how, if you can't close the deal against Virginia Tech, how are you all of a sudden now the favorite against Virginia? There's not been any major injuries that I have heard of. I don't know if you've heard of any, but
I haven't.
so what I'm saying is, John Haidt said the same thing. Give me Virginia plus. I'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. Take it and run with it every single time. The next game up I have on my list, at least, is Georgia Tech at Duke, and I had the spread at 17.5 points. Is that what you have?
I got the same thing.
Okay. This is kind of a pretty short and sweet description for me. Duke is, at home. They're going to redeem themselves after they ruined my pick last week and let Pittsburgh upset them. And they're going to kind of take it to an awful Georgia Tech team. I'm going to take Duke minus 17.5.
We're kind of on the same page here, but like I said, who knows what's going to happen with the Coastal Division. You got to think that against a Georgia Tech team that just can't figure it out, somehow put up 22 points against North Carolina. I have no idea how they did that. But can Quentin Harris beat Georgia Tech by 3 scores? I think he can. Georgia Tech can't stop the run. Harris can do it all. He can pass and run the ball. Duke doesn't have the best defense in the world, giving up 300 total yards to Georgia Tech. Here's my thing. Even if they do give up 300 total yards to Georgia Tech, I still think that they can win by at least 2 scores. And this is kind of like 3 scores. It's not 2 and a field goal. That's why they have that half a point there. So there's no push. So I'm going to say, I'm going to give me Duke as well, minus the 17.5. Next one up is Rhode Island at Virginia Tech. I believe this is off. The spread is turned off on this one. I'm going to go with Virginia Tech on this. I don't know much about Rhode Island, but I really don't look into these ones that with the spread is off. We're just picking the ACC teams. What did you think?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to have to pick Virginia Tech as well, although it would not surprise me, obviously, for Rhode Island to keep it close. I've talked about a lot of the lower-level teams keeping it close with Virginia Tech this year and have been mostly right. But, at the same time, it's Rhode Island. Can you really pick them over Virginia Tech if there's no spread? I got to go with the Hokies. I'm left no choice.
Yeah, that would be one of those games that they would end up losing, and it would destroy the ACC's look even more than it already is, which we can't handle that anymore. But here's another tough one, or at least I think is a little bit tough. Louisville at number 19, Wake Forest. Wake Forest, man, is undefeated. Wake is the favorite, giving 6.5 points as last time I checked.
Yeah, I have the same thing. Both of these teams' last games ended with a win in Chestnut Hill against BC. Wake is coming off a bye week. They're going to get it done at home this week. I'm going to take Wake minus the 6.5.
I'm surprised it's such a powerful offense that Wake has, putting up 500-plus yards per game, and the fact that Newman looks really good, Sage Surratt looks really good. Louisville ends up struggling towards the end of the game. Now, I feel like Louisville and Wake Forest probably go back and forth. But until you get the third quarter, fourth quarter, I think that's when Wake Forest keeps going and Louisville kind of falls off.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of surprised. That's just a touchdown right there, 6.5. So I'll take Wake Forest as well. That's the end of our ACC matchups. Let us know over on YouTube what you think with the ACC matchups. Tell us your picks in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. What's your game that you're looking forward to the most? Alan, we have 20 over on YouTube right now. Thank you for joining us. What do we have over on Facebook?
We're holding with 13 over here on Facebook. Some of the ones that we kind of have watching or we have had watching. I see Grant, Alex, Brett, my mom, Mark. Let's see, David, Audrey, Philip. All these are getting in, and David's doing a good job getting in there with his picks. And Philip gets in and says Zion UMC against the spread every time. So I'm going to go with that. I love that comment as well, Philip. I appreciate you getting in, bud.
But if you didn't hear about this, Philip, last we checked the injury report, Allen is listed as questionable with a sore ankle. That happened more often than not, but he would still play. All right, so here's our ranked versus ranked matchups. The first one is, that big-time matchup in the middle of the United States, right there in the big heart of Texas, Cotton Bowl. Number 6, Oklahoma at number 11. Texas really it's at the Cotton Bowl. They're not at, right? Oklahoma, as what I looked, was minus 10.5. What you got?
Yeah, that's what I have too. Oklahoma still hasn't really played anybody with a pulse as far as I'm concerned. I think there's an opportunity for the Longhorns to kind of knock them out of perfection this week. I'm going to put Oklahoma actually on upset alert for this game, which means I'm definitely taking Texas plus the 10.5 points here.
Whoa. So you're saying upset alert winning by the spread, but are you also saying upset alert winning it all? I mean, actually winning the game?
Correct.
So you don't even need the 10. Why don't you give the 10 to me, and I'll take Oklahoma plus 21. No, I'm just kidding, or minus 21. But, I think Texas has some issues with their leaky defense. I mean, they've kind of had some problems with defense. It made Joe Burrow look like a Heisman candidate at the very beginning, and Joe Burrow has continued to have success at LSU, but it was kind of a shootout there against LSU, and I think it's going to be another shootout against Oklahoma. It's going to be whose defense will hold up the best, and I will also say it's going to be whose quarterback has the most success. To me, I have to go with Jalen Hurts on this one, man. I feel like that Hurts is that kind of guy that can take over this game with his legs, and he's been looking really good so far. So I feel like the Oklahoma has this one in the bag, really, to be honest with you. I don't know if they'll have the championship game if Texas and Oklahoma would meet again. I don't know if they'd have it in the second go-around, but at least on this one, I think I'm going to take Oklahoma minus the 10.5. The next big game we have is Alabama, number one. Hard to say number one there because we know. But number one, Alabama at number 24, Texas A&M. Texas A&M just barely hanging on to a ranked spot. A lot of people thought that they should have fallen out by now. But Alabama is minus 16.5 last time I checked. What do you got?
Well, they have to have at least 8 losses before an SEC team falls out of the polls. So I'm not surprised they're still in there. I want to believe the Aggies can give the Tide a game here. I really do. It makes Clemson, win over them look even better if they do, because the Tide is, or the Aggies have not really been holding up there into the bargain. But based on what I've seen, I just simply can't believe the Aggies can give them a game. The Tide rolls here and wins big, minus 16.5.
For me, the spread might as well be off because I think Alabama's just going to take it to the house. They've got the best quarterback on the field. They've got the best running back on the field. They've got, 15 of the best wide receivers on the field with Smith, Judy, Ruggs, Waddle, all going to have good games. And I think, in my opinion, I think that, and if you look at Tua, I mean, gosh, 113 for 148 with over 1,700 yards passing and 23 touchdowns. What a season so far for Tua. We would love to have that from Trevor Lawrence for sure. Unfortunately, it's taking a little bit longer for Trevor and Clemson's offense to get it together, but Alabama's rolling for sure, and they're passing all over everybody anytime they want. They can just go to anywhere or on the field. And so, like I said, 16.5 to me is not a big feat, especially against the Texas A&M game. Now, the only thing about Texas A&M that I think, as I'm saying it out loud, is that they're going to milk that clock. So they might not have a lot of chances to put up a ton of points. So I don't know if I'd take the over. I don't know what the over is. But, like I said, Texas A&M, when they get the ball, they're going to wait to the very last second to hike it every single time. But I still have to say, give me Alabama minus 16.5. Another big game. This one's from the Big Ten. Number 10, Penn State at number 17, Iowa. So Penn State's got to travel this weekend. It's a close spread. Penn State is minus 3.5. What do you got, Al?
Well, actually, first of all, I wanted to get to David's take on the A&M Alabama game. He said A&M will cover after 3 turnovers and a score with 6 seconds left. All right, so he's kind of having them backdoor the spread, like they did against Clemson, and it really upset you that weekend. So it's a good take from David there. As far as the Penn State-Iowa game, I think Iowa's upset after their big loss to Michigan this past week. I think they're going to rebound at home against Penn State, and so I'm going to take Iowa plus the 3.5.
Okay, I like that. That was one that I kind of went back and forth on. But Penn State, man, they're looking pretty good. They've got a good quarterback in Clifford. He's got over 1,400 yards passing with 12 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions. Penn State's one of those undefeated teams that nobody's really talking about right now. I feel like they have a pretty good balance between offense and defense. Iowa is coming off a awful game against Michigan. Horrible loss. And I can't really forgive them for not standing up and stepping up and showing out during that game. When I leaned on them hard, they let me go.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to forgive them for that, Al. I've got to hold a grudge against Iowa, and so I'm saying give me Penn State minus the 3.5. And here is the big primetime game that we were talking about. This is our last pick of the night, and it's number 7, Florida Gators going into the pretending Death Valley, the fake Death Valley. Number 5, Louisiana State University with Ed Orgeron. Louisiana State, right now I've got minus 13. What do you got?
I have minus 13 as well. I mean, first of all, let's let this out of the bag here. We need more impressions from Morgan Thomas. The show host does great with this. This is the game where Florida gets exposed for what they are, a fraud. I think this is proven by the line. I mean, this is two teams that are, undefeated. They're both way up in the ranks, top 10 teams, and the line is minus 13. That tells you something there. Vegas doesn't believe in Florida either here. So I agree with Vegas. I think the line is it's 2 touchdowns for a reason here. They know it. They know the Death Valley, the fake Death Valley is going to be rocking. And I, like I said, Vegas knows. So give me LSU minus 13.
Ooh, Al. Not so fast. Not so fast. Not so fast. That's as good as I can do with Ed Orgeron there. I might have blown out your speakers if you're listening to this on the radio right now. I'm sorry. But, Florida, here's the thing. Florida only needed to really, to me, you get 2 cross-divisional or games to play, right? Florida had LSU and Auburn. They took Auburn. They beat them. They already did their business. They already did what they had to do and split the 1 game of 2. And so I really don't feel like the Gators have to prove as much this game. Now, LSU is one of those teams that, minus the Texas game, they've got to start to show that they can hold up against a really good defense. I'm already telling you, I feel like that Florida has an elite defense. They're not pretenders on the defensive side of the ball. They can get back, they can sack you like crazy, and they can stop the run like crazy. And, Florida or LSU is their strength is the passing game. And Joe Burrow is doing really well right now. Some questions coming out of Florida for sure, though. Is Kyle Trask okay? He got his knee bent backwards after that, and that's their starting quarterback. He came back after getting hit, but it looked very limited when you saw him try to run around. Even they still had him running around, Al, and it was kind of awkward with that knee brace going on. So I was worried about that. I'm concerned about Kyle Trask and how good he's going to be, but his arm's still good. Florida's defense is good, but LSU has 8 wide receivers with over 13 yards per catch average right now. So I look for LSU to try to throw the ball all over the place, but Florida's defense is really good. This is going to be a defensive game, I feel like. Can LSU handle Florida's defense better than Auburn did? I think that LSU is going to win, but for 13 points against a team that I feel like has got the momentum and just won a big game that they didn't really, most people felt like they couldn't win or weren't going to win. A lot of people told me, you got to pick Auburn because it's going to be easy money. And I said, no way, I'm picking Florida in this game. And I'm going to pick Florida again this one. This is my big upset. Well, really, I'm not saying I'm upset in the sense of spread. I think Florida plus 13 will win. But I think LSU is probably going to win by maybe 1 touchdown. So that's my prediction there for the LSU-Florida game. I hope you enjoyed our picks against the spread for Week 7. Let us know in the comments over on YouTube or Facebook what you think about our picks against the spread or what game you're looking forward to the most. If you haven't said hello to us over in the chat, let us know. Chat's kind of quiet right now. Nobody called in again tonight, so we always have our hotline, our Buffalo Wild Wings of Greenville, South Carolina hotline there for you. But after an hour, if it cuts off, it cuts off after an hour if we don't have anybody waiting. So, we'll have to get in next week. If you couldn't get in this week, try us again next week. If you have any questions, concerns, or emotional outbursts, let them know. Let us know in the comments. Al, what you got over on Facebook before we head to break?
We're holding with 15 right now. And by the way, Philip disagrees with you on the Florida pick. He says their Florida magic has worn off. LSU minus 13. I agree with Philip, and hopefully we can be proven right this weekend.
Well, I came away with a win with the Auburn-Florida game, so I'm hoping to do the same, keep my luck going. But everyone, we're going to take a quick break. Stay with us. When we get back, we'll go over our preview and prediction for this weekend's big game between the Clemson Tigers and the Florida State Seminoles. Remember to check us out, The Morgan Thomas Show with Big Al on Facebook, YouTube, and The Roar. We'll be right back after this. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Morgan Thomas Show with my co-host, Big Al, Alan Adams. Open phone lines again. Well, actually, we don't have open phone lines. We just closed them after no calls waiting. So let us know in the comments if you have any questions. But again, we are over here in Greenville, South Carolina. So join us every Wednesday night, 8:30 p.m. live from 8:30 to, well, whenever we want to go. But and we also have replays up on YouTube, video replays on YouTube, and audio replays over on the Roar every Thursday night at 8 p.m. So check us out there, 105.5 the Roar FM or 97.5 FM over in Spartanburg. Jump on and check us out as you're driving around town. This is topic number 3, Al. This is our final segment of the night, and this is the Clemson versus Florida State preview and prediction. So start us off. What are some of your thoughts heading into this big game this weekend?
Well, first off, segment 3 is brought to you by Heating Cooling Services, Inc. They are family owned and operated, serving Anderson County and surrounding areas since 1980. Heating Cooling Services, Inc. is your residential and commercial comfort expert. Anything from preventative maintenance of your home HVAC system to overhauling a commercial chiller and anything in between. If you want to, feel cool and breathe nice and easy in your home or business this summer, give Mark or Jason a call at Heating Cooling Services, Inc. 864-224-7655. Again, that number is 864-224-7655. I've used them. They saved me a ton of money. Good people, and good people provide good service. So, ladies and gentlemen, give Heating Cooling Services, Inc. a call, and we appreciate them being a sponsor for segment 3 here. So, segment 3, the preview, ladies and gentlemen. All right. So, I think kind of the prevailing theme for this game is the inability for FSU's line to block anybody. Okay, they have not done that very well. I think they gave up a ton of sacks to NC State. So coming into Death Valley against a Brent Venables defense who love to blitz, as you like to call him, blitz Venables at times, that doesn't appear to bode very well for them. Clemson should have done the same thing against UNC, and that didn't happen. So, maybe it's not as big a deal as we think it is. UNC had a really young offensive line. I think they had like 3 sophomores and 2 freshmen maybe, and we weren't able to get quite the pressure on that we were expecting. But, I think Brent Venables is really going to have a good plan for this week. And I think they're going to get to the quarterback early and often. Now, here's the question. Who's the quarterback going to be? Is Blackman healthy? Is he going to be playing? And is he going to start, or are they going to go with Hornibrook? I think if Blackman is healthy, that he's the guy. Although I think Hornibrook is kind of less prone to mistakes than Blackman is, but Blackman has kind of a higher upside. I think you have to hit some big plays to beat Clemson. Like UNC did, and Hornibrook doesn't really have the arm strength to do that as much. Blackman's mobility and his arm strength kind of, gives him an element that Hornibrook doesn't have. They try to extend plays. He can make some bigger throws and that kind of thing. I think they're going to have to do that if they want any chance in this game. FSU star player, as we know, is running back Cam Akers. And that's despite the offensive line issues. We understand he's very explosive and capable of hitting those big plays. I think he's the key to the game for FSU. We've documented the issues with Clemson linebackers and their tackling this year. I have not been super impressed from what we have seen from those guys so far as their tackling is concerned. You miss one on Akers, and he very well could go the distance. But I think those are some of the things, at least on Florida State's side, as what we're looking for in this game. What do you have?
Well, I will tell you that I did some research right before this. I was out of town this week over in Charlotte doing some work for my normal job. But I noticed that a couple of days ago, 24/7 Sports came out and said that Florida State had named Blackman the starter for the Clemson game. So that's it looks like as of October 7th. So put James Blackman in instead of Alex Hornibrook. I don't know if I'd really do that, to be honest. I mean, as a coach myself, just because you come back from injury, with the fact that the Florida State Seminoles have done well the past 2 games, and that Hornibrook really hasn't hurt them in any way. I mean, he's led them to victories. I don't know if I would just automatically put Blackman back in the game, but it does change up things. I mean, Blackman's not a terrible quarterback. He's got 970 yards passing with 9 touchdowns and 2 interceptions before he got injured. And so now that he's going to be back and playing this game, the thing about Blackman, though, is I think that is kind of why Hornibrook ended up winning the Louisville game, is because for whatever reason, Blackman starts out really strong. And he can get up 21-0 sometimes against some of his opponents. But then all of a sudden, it's like as the game goes on, he struggles and struggles and struggles. And the whole team, really, the whole offense, and it all kind of bases around that offensive line, as you were talking about. Man, against NC State, Al, It looks like they got sacked 8 times.
Mm.
And that's going to be pretty scary against Blitz Venables and the Clemson defense. That's one knock against them there. ESPN's football power index really right now has them as a 6.2 percentage chance of winning, 93.8 percentage chance for Clemson to win. If you look at it, both teams seem to have pretty powerful offenses, but the one that has the best defense, and defense wins championships, as they always say, the one that has the best defense is Clemson, keeping people at 12 points per game right now. Florida State's almost allowing 30 points per game. So Clemson, I think, is going to come out, and I think it's going to be back and forth for the first couple of quarters. I really do. I feel like it's one of those games where Clemson and Florida State are just going to score pretty high in the first half, and I don't really know how close it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be a blowout at halftime. But then I think after halftime turns around, I think that's when Clemson starts to wear down that offensive line. Clemson's biggest problem against UNC is that UNC had 2 running backs that they could go to, Williams or Carter. They could kind of like rotate them out. And they had a very strong play action game going with that running game. And I think that's what really worked against Clemson, who runs a 3-3-5. If you're mainly relying on the passing game, the 3-3-5 falls right into Clemson's hands. They've got 5 guys out there that are guarding against the coverage and that are playing coverage, one of those being Isaiah Simmons, who can just do anything and everything every game. So I'll tell you, at the beginning of the week, I went on a podcast to FET Greenville, and I talked to Gray Thompson. It was about a 2.5-hour podcast we did. It was crazy. But he talked to me about the Florida State game, and on Monday, before I knew about Blackman coming in, I felt like that Hornibrook would do enough to keep the game close. Think about it. The spread right now, Al, is 27 points.
Yep.
Whew. I mean, that is pretty high, man. I mean, Clemson has kind of been they're 5-0, right? And they've had 2 where they didn't beat the spread and 3 where they did beat the spread. So kind of average against the spread right now. My heart is saying just go pick Clemson, but that is 4 scores right there. 4 scores against Florida State. If you look at the history, you know how I told you I was going to start looking at the history. Clemson has won the last 4, but the only one that was a blowout really was that last year. I think it was like 59-10.
It was.
If you look at the other years, it was pretty close. I'm talking within 14, 16 points. With the fact that Florida State is kind of got a little bit of momentum, it makes me want to say that Florida State will be able to keep it within 27. Now, will Florida State win? No. I don't think Florida State's going to win at all. I don't think Cam Akers is going to be able to get anything going against Clemson. I think, just like you said, Clemson is going to be able to get to the quarterback. And, I mean, if NC State can sack him 8 times, I think Clemson can do the same, especially being, at Death Valley. I think that plays into Clemson's favor as well. It's just really hard for me to say that they can beat them by 27. Mm-hmm. But then I start looking at other things. Like, for example, Janaris Robinson, their star defensive end, is not going to play the entire first half because of a targeting penalty against NC State. Mm-hmm. So you got to put that into account for sure. And another thing, too, is Florida State has they're going to give Clemson their best shot. Yeah. As we said, Clemson is that top team. Florida State is not a team, even though they're not good. They're not a team that wants to go around and they still want to beat Clemson. They don't want to just give up every game. They're not tanking for any reason. I know my diehard Clemson fans are telling me, Morgan, go with your heart. Go with the 27 spread. I don't know if I can really do it. I really don't, because we have to see what Clemson can do after that Tar Heel game. They had a lot of struggles on the offensive line to the right-hand side of the ball, not getting any running game going there, and I really feel like Travis Etienne's got to figure that out, and the offensive line's got to figure that out. They also did a lot of streak plays, a lot of deep balls that just throwing it up 50-50. They got to figure that out. They got to change that up and do something differently. Kelly Gramlich recently interviewed one of the players. I think it was it was Tremaine Akram, and she said, has Clemson pulled out the entire playbook? And he kind of gave her a smirk, and he said, I'm not at liberty to discuss that. And so, basically everybody's opinion on, as far as fans and on Twitter and social media has been that Clemson's just going with a base offense.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people are saying, okay, after this scare, now Clemson's going to open up the playbook. You know, I don't know. I really don't. It's really hard for me to pick Clemson plus or pick Clemson by more than 27. So, and I just hate saying this in public, Al. I really do. But I'm going to pick Florida State plus the points on this one, just because it's a lot of points, man. 27 scares me in this case. But I will say that Clemson wins. Hopefully, Clemson wins by 26, so then I feel good on both ends. They blow them out, but they don't blow them out enough.
And that's a fair point. I mean, goodness gracious, we just saw them go toe to toe, last week or, not last Saturday, but 2 weeks ago, basically against UNC. I mean, anything can happen. And Florida State, like you said, is playing better. Kendall Briles does a good job with the offense there, kind of making something out of nothing there, really. He's shown a lot of improvement there. They've got the new kind of helper for the defensive coordinator there, Levitt, as well. So, I mean, they're kind of getting things slightly turned around. Maybe they're not, where they want to be, but they're getting closer, I think. I think also, though, Clemson, after all this talk, Dabo talked about he kind of is back on the Roy bus, gave it an oil change or something like that, took the cover off of the Roy bus. So that's awesome. I love anytime he can play the underdog card there. And every time he does, Tigers tend to make a statement. And this is kind of one of those games where I think that's going to happen. Philip gets in and says, I think Clemson coasts at home. Good coaches tend to turn wake-up calls into positives, which Dabo and the coordinators were doing. That's exactly what I was talking about. I think this was a wake-up call. I think they will open up the playbook a little more, at least in the beginning, assuming they need it. One of the things that kind of wanted to get your thoughts on was, with Cam Akers obviously being, one of the focal points of the offense and UNC kind of having some success in the run game, do you think Clemson might play a little more 4-3 this week as opposed to the three-man front?
Well, I could definitely see them switching it up. I got a bunch of questions really about the offensive line. I would say from the fans, we got questions about the offensive line. I'll ask you that back. Sure. But as far as a defensive line, I mean, I'm not opposed to going to a 4-3. I feel like that it's one of those things that he had to make the adjustment because of the unknowns on the defensive line.
Sure.
But I don't see why you couldn't have Tyler Davis, Pickney, and Williams out there all at the same time if they had to, or if you wanted to have Williams and Pickney out there, or Davis and Williams. I think you have enough to rotate and have four down, but they definitely are not the same size as last year and as what Clemson has been accustomed to as far as the interior. So maybe that's why they went to a 3-3-5. Sure. Maybe they even do something even different and come out with a 3-4, more of kind of like a pro style, maybe more of a Green Bay Packers style where you have four linebackers and keep those three linemen. Maybe throw out a Jake Venables there more, or a Mike Jones more in the field and fill up that box with more linebackers. That's maybe a thought for me. Here's something back to you, Al. People were asking me, should they just drop Sean Pollard? Is he, maybe he's not doing well at center. Maybe Gage Cervinka's not doing well at guard. I think they kind of, Falsinelli was in the center, right, last year. And then Pollard and Cervinka were guards last year on the right-hand side. Now they are having to be center and guard together. Do you think that there's an issue there with lack of experience with what they're doing? I mean, Pollard's obviously an all-conference type guy, and Cervinka's a pretty reliable guy too, but there definitely is something going on the right side of the offensive line.
Yeah, there definitely is. I mean, you mentioned about that a good bit last week, actually, when we were talking about the North Carolina game, and the right side got no push. There was no running to the right side. It was all on the left. And I agree with you that the problem is, if you take Pollard out, what's your line going to look like? A lot of people don't like Cade Stewart in there at right guard. There's a lot of kind of critics against him. So I don't know that that's a better option right now. As a matter of fact, I think Pollard has looked pretty good snapping the ball. Now, as far as, his blocking and everything like that, which is obviously, I get it, is a very important part of the game. But one of the things I was most worried about with Pollard was his snapping and the velocity and the accuracy of his snaps. And I think he's done a pretty good job with that this year across the board. So, I'm hoping it's just kind of little things here and there that they can kind of get fixed. I think one of the issues could possibly be that we rotate in so many guys. You know, a young offensive line, I don't want to say young offensive line, obviously they're older players, but as far as this particular combination of players, you know, hasn't been together all that long. And I think you have to develop that continuity on the line is incredibly important with an offensive line. You know, so when we're kind of rotating parts and shifting players around and that kind of thing, it's hard to get comfortable. And I think that may be part of the issue. So hopefully we can get that fixed. I trust the coaches to get that done. Robbie Caldwell especially has done a great job over the past few years. So I have no doubt he'll kind of get that done. I really think they're going to have a good game this week because I think this is going to be a big game for Travis Etienne. You know, I think he's kind of frustrated with his limited role in the past few games. You know, people are clamoring for more touches from this guy, and I would agree. I think he's going to give you a huge effort this week, bust a couple of big runs, and kind of get back to that Travis Etienne form we all know and love. So I look for a big game from number 9 this weekend.
I like everything you're saying. I still feel like that the offensive line adjustments that need to happen are going to be more difficult to do than just simply changing the play calling with the wide receiver routes that are being run. That's
Sure.
a pretty simple fix right there. Just run more slants, just run more towards the middle of the field. Stop throwing it deep all the time. I think that's some simple fixes there. You already have really, really talented wide receivers out there, so no need to kind of do any rotation. They already rotate all over the field. For me, again, it's the offensive line. What can they do? Can they step up and show that they can be dominant just like we were last year? Can they show that they can to play together as a group? That's going to be some of the things I want to see out of the Florida State game. And you got me excited about it. I hope you're excited about watching it. Let us know what you think about the game over in the comments on Facebook and YouTube. A couple people telling us their picks. A lot of people are saying that they do believe Clemson will beat Florida State by the spread and want to just kind of give me some reassurance that they will do that. So I appreciate that. Like I said, I'm gonna be okay if I'm wrong in this case, but it's just 27 points is a lot for me to be okay with. I've always been scared of high spreads, and so this is one of those games I'm going to stay away from. But if you want to get in on the conversation, it's every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. over on Facebook and YouTube. And then if you want to watch the replay or listen to the replay, you can check us out over on the Roar Radio, 105.5 FM or 97.5 FM in Spartanburg. And that's every Thursday night at 8 p.m. That's it for the show this week. We hope that you enjoyed watching and listening. Again, check us out on Facebook, YouTube, and The Roar. This is the Morgan Thomas Show with my good friend, Big Al. It's our bedtime, Al. We are out of here. We hope you have a great weekend. And as always, Tiger fans, we'll see you at the top of the hill.